back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, or Mike if you prefer, and I got a review for you today. We're going to be talking about Image Comics, Nights, issue number 1. It is written by Wyatt Kennedy, art by Luigi Formisano, colors by Francesco Segala, and letters by Letizia Mirabella. I know I butchered those names. I'm sorry. It's no form of disrespect. Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe on this guy's channel. It does help. Hit the bell. You never know when I will be dropping reviews. But alright, let's get into it. I was a little mistaken about what this book was, but it's pretty self-explanatory once it gets going. Another thing to note is this book comes with a soundtrack that you can download, using the scan code, wherever it is. But I think it's like each book has a certain song that you're supposed to listen to. This one is by the Stampeders, and it is Sweet City Woman. There's actually like certain panels that pop up where you're supposed to be listening to the song, kind of thing. I didn't need to. I might go back and listen to them because some of the songs I'm not familiar with. But basically, the book opens up, and it's taking place in Santa Pedro, Florida, and we are following the main character of Vincent. Recently, his parents died, and he's going back to Florida to live with his brother Ivory. He is met at the plane station by kind of one of his new friends, but his name is Matt. This guy here, this is Vincent right here. But basically, he is brought in and shown like all kind of the group, and it's like of Ivory's friends, and it's Connor, who is this right here, and it's of course his brother Ivory, and then Matt, and then we have another kid. I can't remember his name, but they're not really particularly important. It's really just Vincent, Ivory, and Matt. But basically, up to this point, the book is kind of regular. Vincent is coming back to Florida. He hasn't been here a long time. The group plans to show him around Florida. They do mention that there's some kind of cool things that they need to show him, kind of thing. Eventually, the group does split up, and he heads with Matt on the back of a bike. As they're heading out, they mention that there's a vampire here that he needs to be careful about going into the woods. And as they're heading out on the motorcycle, we get the scene right here, and we see this image of somebody flying across this, across the water. And sure enough, it's a girl that's flying across the water. And Matt mentions that that's the town's vampire. They end up going to this hidden place that was particularly, reminiscent and nostalgic for Ivory and Vincent when he was young, so that's why Matt brought him here to, show him that it's still kind of here, kind of thing. As they were here, they kind of mentioned this gang that's been there for a long time in Florida, but it's these bunch of little kids called the SBs or something like that. It's brought up kind of briefly, but we'll touch on it in a second. We actually get to meet Gray right here. She works as a pizza delivery person at the moment, and she's actually bringing this dude and this pizza. As you can see, it's all messed up, I guess, due her flying with it or whatever. He says he's going to complain, kind of thing, and that's all we get here is some kind of funny commentary between the vampire pizza delivery and the guy that ordered the pizza, and the town knows that she's a vampire and she's a pizza delivery. It's kind of common practice, kind of thing. Eventually she does get fired because of this situation. She has this freak out scene. As Matt and Vince were checking out that plane, as I mentioned with the SB gang, they happened to steal the motor and graffiti the bike. Luckily, the rest of the journey is kind of downhill from there, so they do make it home, down home. As they're making it to home, we kind of meet something else, that the town also has ghosts, and the ghosts are kind of, everybody in the town knows that there's ghosts, and it's explained that the ghosts have 25 years to resolve their unfinished business, or else they just vanish into nothing. Matt brings up a valid point about, like, if everybody can see the ghosts and they're trying to do their thing, does that bother the ghost with people knowing? And the ghost does mention it does bother them to some degree. We get the scene over here with this car that's being ripped off by the SB gang, and we get to see what the SB gets, a bunch of teenagers, and we get to learn a little more about Ivory, and we learn that he is a contracted killer, because the guy that, this guy that the kids were robbing was the, intended guy that Ivory shows up and kills. So we learn he's assassin for hire. We finally make it home to where Matt and everybody is living. It's this one, I guess it's Matt and Ivory's parents' house. It's not really explained, but it's a house where all the kids live. We get the scene where Matt goes outside. He wants to be a songwriter, and I'm saying the wrong name. His name is Vincent, but Vincent is a songwriter, and he's outside writing the song, and Gray sneaks up on him. He ends up getting scared, and he attacks her. We get this funny scene where we see that she can, she says she has a concussion, and she literally breaches her own head with her hand. I didn't really get the scene, but she literally fixes the concussion. She explains she's been watching Vincent since she's got back. She needs this new job because she got fired from her old job, and she explains that she's going to be a thief, and she needs like a right-hand man that can get into places, and she deems that Vincent is going to be her right hand. She spells right like as far as German. She explains that she's a vampire. She doesn't need to eat all the time. It's like once every 50 years. She's 150 years old, and she comes from Germany is what we gather. They have this scene where they go to Blockbuster. Of course, this book takes place in 1999, so Blockbusters were still a thing. They go here with the intention to steal something, and it ends up being this lady's hat, which we find out she doesn't really want the hat. She just wants it because the old lady has it, but she was really just testing. She was testing Vincent to see if he'd actually steal the hat, and he does, and gives it to her, and she throws it away kind of thing. Explains they're going to go over this later, and they eventually make it to Vincent's house, and as he gets here, she mentions, hey, this is my house too, and we find out Gray lives there too. And he kind of gets mad that it wasn't explained that, Gray wasn't living there, but he explains that, it's something that he's going to get used to. We have the scene right here where we find out that vampires sleepwalk, and we kind of see that there's a sexy scene that Vincent gets to see, and it's kind of a setting up something else, that Vincent's slowly falling in love with our vampire friend. We get the scene where it goes 5 years later, and we're kind of running with Ivory, and he's in this like stuck situation. He's not doing so well. He's going to take this job interview at a school, and supposedly right now he's messed up on drugs, and he's trying to pretend to be this good guy, and the whole town kind of knows he's a bad guy, not necessarily an assassin, but a bad guy. We get this scene with Ivory and Gray as he's going out to get his job. Everybody has high hopes. We get to his job interview, and it doesn't go so well. The teacher does know his bad background, and basically the teacher's like, or the principal is like, yeah, I'm not really going to hire you unless you can show me that you've changed your ways, kind of thing. We get, after the interview, we get, Ivory and Vincent, and Vincent's catching up with Ivory, and he's like, hey, how'd it go? All right, we're going to celebrate later, and Ivory doesn't really tell him. We get the scene where he goes out there and freaks out, and we get this other teacher who's watching him freak out, so probably not so good for Ivory. He gets a call to make it to a location later on that night, and we find out more about it. Also, during this timeline in the 5 years, their friend Matt happened to die, and he is now one of the ghosts that's running around. Hence the skeleton dude that's on the cover. That's their friend Matt. We don't know what he died or how he died, kind of thing. It's briefly mentioned. The book jumps over to Ivory, and he's basically taking a contract hit from this guy right here. We learn a little bit later, but we'll get there. So we get some fun stuff with, basically Vincent and his crew, and they have him at Gray. Gray shows up and meets the whole crew. She's thought to be a myth or something like that because, they mention that their friend is a vampire kind of thing. We go back over to the contract hit, and we get a little more information. Ivory's supposed to go up to this house. He's basically supposed to whack this guy. As soon as Ivory gets there, he says he smells bats or something like that. We get another scene with Gray and Vincent, and they're basically talking about a little bit in the future. And Vincent's mentioning that he wants to go to school to be a film director now, and he still has hopes to write songs, but he wants to do a lot of different things, and they end up leaving. This happens to be Vincent's birthday as well, so Gray has secretly, like has a surprise party waiting. We get the scene where Ivory's, to the house, and like I said, when he gets there, he smells bats. It didn't ring a bell at the second, but of course, vampires kind of thing. We do learn some weird things when Ivory goes in there to meet this dude that he's supposed to kill. The guy knows intimately details about Ivory. Ivory doesn't like all this. He feels it's just like a funny situation, and he attacks the guy. And sure enough, he turns out to be this weird kind of a monstrous-looking vampire. Explains that this isn't how it's supposed to go, and Ivory doesn't matter. He kills him anyways by curb stomping him, which was fantastic. But we get this scene over here with the Gray and Vincent, and she basically takes him up to see this view of Florida from way up high, saying it's you got to see the view before you leave. We get Vincent going to a surprise birthday party. We get a lot more close-ups of Matt being dead, and it looks pretty dope. But basically at the end of it, we get the scene with Gray and Vincent, and she's saying goodbye, but as she says goodbye, she says that she loves him, kind of throws him off, and we get this scene between Ivory and Vincent, and he's basically, Vincent's still kind of messed up from her Gray saying, she loves him kind of thing. He doesn't understand it. We get the scene over here, and it's basically Gray freaking out. All of a sudden, she's getting hungry. She doesn't know why, and she leaves out the window. The very last thing we get is a thing that says the future, and right here it says that Gray's going to destroy the earth and kill everybody in it, and we get this weird like godlike thing and this person over here, and that's where the book leaves off. That's all we got. It was a fantastic read. I didn't know what was going on, but like I said, the book kind of explains everything that as it's going on. I loved it. I love the art, the setup, all the characters. I feel like I have a sense on where it's going, but man, I loved it. But that is my review on Nights #1. Let me know down below if you read it, passed it up, all that good stuff. Alright guys, that's my review.